that situation I'm doing.
Yeah, I've been, got this upper respiratory thing that I've been using the breathing treatment for a week. And I'm supposed to be done with it. Yeah, that's when mine started out.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. You gonna be one of the volunteers in 2 weeks for traffic stop practicals?
Yeah, well, I finally went in. First thing they did, give me a COVID test, which I come back negative. Then they said, well, they gave you this and this, and put me through this and this for a week. So I'm still
So
doing it,
not,
but
so
I'm getting better.
2 weeks from tomorrow. It should be.
It's working.
Let me check.
So March 18th?
I must have messed up that part.
I don't think so. I'm thinking of
Out there.
You still look for this doctor.
There you go.
If they need some man available.
So I have to do a so.
Maybe Greg just hasn't put up the sign
Yeah.
pay, so.
I miss it. I used to get some. Maybe.
Very possible, he's been very stressed out the last week.
They need to get it done.
I'm available if you need
Money,
somebody.
they're not that stuff
All right.
down.
I'll ask him
Sure
about it, I'll
helps
see him
my
tomorrow.
son-in-law.
I used to take it.
He takes a teaspoon a day.
How you doing, Heather?
Oh, take, I'm doing great. How are you?
Surprised we don't.
Hey, Lori, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Who's doing the yoga class, do you know?
Didn't
I don't remember, I know it's going through the end of, I know it's going through May, I forget who the instructor is, but I know Jay was doing a lot of work to find somebody, and found someone interested.
Yeah. I saw a sign up there that they're doing a free last Sunday, 2 to 3.
Yeah, I can't remember what the name
If
of
it
it
rains, I'll maybe go, so I knew what I was gonna do. 40%. More on Saturday.
Saturday,
Is that needed? I saw 75, 90, so yeah.
Well, depends on who you're talking about. The guys that don't wanna work Saturday told me it was a nice.
It might be. I mean,
But it says 50 on Saturday, 70 on Sunday.
Going to school.
Oh, that's, oh yeah, it is. So it's changed up from what it
Weather
was.
channel says 46 Saturday, 69 Sunday.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's after.
Yeah,
This conference will now be recorded.
Who's got their sound on?
I think it's Kevin.
Probably me.
Yeah, there's a little.
That might be me.
No, I think it's.
Oh,
It's
oh,
Kevin.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe mine were taken off.
Oh, in that.
I had
to-
to.
I
Oh,
I thought it was
Well,
off.
right, it doesn't happen until like there's
Yeah,
an
there's a
unmute.
little fuel in here.
Unmute
I
us.
didn't check it, but it happens.
I thought it was mine going off somewhere, because when I crank them up, I usually crank them up when I get here, and then I wait for Lori to talk.
What?
I use you as a test.
Whether you can hear me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me
Sound
now?
check.
yes, I do.
Can you hear me now? Does it make a difference?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
It makes it.
Because it makes a difference, because sometimes I can't
Put this
hear
on
you
or
at
not?
all.
Oh,
And that's why I have to adjust to you. 'Cause
Okay.
You're the only one that's important as far as these things.
Did you hear that, guys?
As far as my hearing aids are.
Well, now let's
Here,
give,
just asked if you're doing okay.
let's give Brad a hard time for not speaking up at the podium too.
Well, he doesn't.
Brad's the problem.
He doesn't have that female voice.
You gotta lean into it.
It's the female voice that,
I usually have a pretty strong voice, so I'm surprised when people can't hear me.
well, I think it's great for when I'm at home with my wife.
Oh, and you turned down?
Yeah, well, yeah, because see, that's the way it does filter a little
It
bit.
filters what you wanna hear from what you don't
Yeah,
wanna
yeah.
hear.
Roger doesn't have hearing aids and he still can filter it. What he wants to do.
That's like my parents. My mom was losing her hearing in the lower tonal ranges, my dad losing it in the higher.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was having a hard trouble just hearing folks talk, especially if they're behind me. So now that I have some 360.
Yeah, mine fixed up behind me too, so.
All right, I got 7 o'clock.
Okay, your game's on.
7 o'clock, I would like to call the March 3rd DeSoto City Council meeting to order. Start with roll call, please.
Lane,
Here.
Ritter,
Here.
Hanamichael,
Here.
Daniels,
Here.
Murdoch,
Here.
all are present.
Okay. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our first item tonight is a public hearing.
I will have to recuse myself from this item.
Okay, so the clerk will note that Councilman Hanamichael is leaving the meeting.
So noted.
Okay.
Council just wanted to, as I put in the packet, we were planning on having the public hearing, the development agreement at tonight's meeting, but the documents just simply are not ready. But since we did previously notice a public hearing for tonight, would ask that the mayor go ahead and open the public hearing, and if anyone wants to address the council as part of that public hearing, that's fine, but then we'll recess the public hearing until, I think the next meeting.
March 17th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
March 17th, so.
Okay,
This item is just on the spec building that they're committed to building as part of the project. And this is really just a resolution of intent, so it's just essentially indicating that your intent is to issue the IRBs, so.
all right. Before I open the hearing, does anyone have any questions for Patrick on that?
Nope.
All right. I officially open the public hearing for the issuance of 100 million in IRB, industrial revenue bonds. Does anyone wish to address, speak to this item? Seeing none, then I would ask for a motion to continue the meeting to our council meeting of March 17th.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we recess the public hearing to March 17th.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanamichael. Oh, motion carries.
Okay. You want to go grab Kevin? right, our next item is the consent agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes from our council meeting of February 17th and approval of pay ordinance number 921. Anyone have an issue with the consent agenda, or would someone like to make a motion to?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Murdock,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanamichael,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 2 is call to public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not listed on tonight's agenda. The comments that are discussed under call to public may or may not be acted on by the council during this meeting. There is a 4-minute time limit. Does anyone wish to address the council tonight? Okay. Seeing none? No one online either?
No one online.
Okay. We will move on. Item 3 is old business, which we have none, so we'll go to item 4A. Consider Resolution 1067 calling for an election to be held on June 21st, 2022.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is a follow-up from the last several meetings regarding the 3/4 cent sales tax for capital projects. At the last meeting, council instructed staff to prepare a resolution with the final ballot language to renew the 3/4 cent sales tax. The mayoral election is scheduled to end on June 21st. Today, Resolution 1067 is in front of you and calls for the mayoral election to renew the sales tax on June 21st. The agenda item outlines the key dates of the election timeline, the first being this evening with the approval of the resolution, the next being an informational session scheduled for May 23rd. Ballots will be mailed on May 31st, and all ballots are due back to the elections office on June 21st. We will record the first informational session on May 23rd and make it available to the public. We will also create an informational page on the city website and an insert in the April utility billing, along with several reminder Facebook posts on the city's page. I will come back to the council with information on the informational session at the April 21st council meeting. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and there's a recommended motion on the agenda item.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Brandon on the wording of the ballot language or the resolution? Anyone have any comments they'd like to make on anything else regarding that?
I'll just comment that I'm happy to see the communication plan established on here. I like that.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion, we adopt Resolution 1067 as written to call for an election of the renewal of the city's current 0.75% sales tax.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Hanamichael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Murdock,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item 4B, consider ordinance 2531 adopting text amendment recommended by Planning Commission for architectural standards.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is a fairly lengthy process that we went through with the Planning Commission about updating the architectural standards. One of the biggest issues that we have to address is that our current code does not allow for tilted concrete construction. So any kind of project that would be completed, Gabriel property or potentially Sunflower could use that type of process, and that's pretty standard now as far as the buildings that are going up for these large distribution centers. So that was the, I guess, sort of the nexus for moving forward with this. And of course, we needed to look at our architectural standards. One thing that Mike and I discussed with our architectural standards, they were somewhat rigid. They required certain things, and upon review of a lot of community city codes and development processes, they've kind of actually made it more subjective. Just because you say you've got to have a certain percentage of masonry, certain percentage of glass, certain percentage of ventilation in the building facade doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna get a good building. You might get something that costs a lot more and not look very good either. So the trend is to give the architects and the designers some flexibility. It's kind of one of those things we don't want to see. We want to see something that's an attractive building that does have changes in the facade, does have glass, does have all these items, but we don't have hard, fast rules that it must have 5, 10, 20% of this material, that material. So it does, fall on city staff and the planning commission to really evaluate not only what's being presented, but really get into the plans of drawings and not just start counting 10% of this, 5% of that, and just say, well, it's the requirement, the building might look terrible. Now, it might look good too, but you just want to make sure there was some flexibility. And that was also brought to bear by Post-Nelly. They want to have some flexibility in buildings that they develop as well. So at the 25th meeting, this is where we introduced this topic to the Planning Commission. We really talked about setbacks, architectural features, landscape buffering. The aspect of the tilt-up construction was a pretty much no-brainer. There was really no discussion on that. Everybody realizes that's a pretty common way to build these large box buildings efficiently, so there wasn't much issue with that. Of course, the residents of the area are certainly concerned about what they'll be looking at for the next 10, 20 years, and how they can feel like they were involved in the process of like their, lifestyle and what they're going to have to deal with will be at least protected as best possible. So we did have a public hearing on February 22nd. As I mentioned, several residents spoke at that meeting as well. Post-Nelly folks also were at that meeting and offered their suggestions. Things that we looked at really, or I looked at primarily, were, as the Planning Commission was on Nexus standards and Olathe standards. I also did look at Edgerton standards as well, because North Point development has a lot of large box developments. Some of those buildings are up to 1 million square feet, so over 20 acres inside of a building. So that is a pretty significant feature. And I also spent some time driving around looking at all these things too. I took pictures of some areas that were older styles that you could tell, where you could see the architecture or the air conditioning units and things like that on top of the buildings that weren't hidden behind the parapet. So we have a lot of things that are in our code that were good. When I looked at the Nexus, Shawnee's to some degree, and Olathe, there's a lot of common language in there, so we really just needed to sort of fix a few things. And Post-Nelly did submit to us what they had suggested. We looked at those, and really they didn't take anything out of our code. They just added some information they thought was more beneficial to help facilitate and allow for some of the subjective things that the Planning Commission and city staff look at as we move through a site plan review. And actually, upon looking at all those items, really felt that they were fairly reasonable suggestions. So we include those into our presentation to the Planning Commission with some additional feedback from things that I had learned by looking at additional buildings and also looking at surrounding cities' codes. And so with that, we had a pretty lively discussion with the Planning Commission. Received a lot of good impact. One thing that did come up also is the lighting standards. We do feel like our standards are adequate at this point. Commissioner Temple did want us to take a look at those at a later date to just make sure that, they haven't been updated in a while. We want to make sure that they're consistent with new technology of LED lights and ways to create light safety conditions for people working, coming and going from these facilities, but not having light spill off into the surrounding areas. So we will be looking at that. And I did include our lighting section in your packet. Anyway, we believe that the suggestions submitted by Flint Post-Nelly are appropriate for the city code, but we did also include some changes that staff came up with, that were part of the whole process. One is to allow concrete panel with acrylic coating as a acceptable building material. Planning Commission, after some fairly lengthy discussion, felt like a 250-foot building setback from areas that were residential across the street, basically. The only area that this would impact would be along Edgerton Road. So I had suggested a 200-foot setback. Justin Gilbert had done some research on it, and felt like a 250-foot setback was a better, a more appropriate setback for areas that had loading docks. But that was the loading docks that were going to face residential areas that needed to have the 250-foot setback, along with some additional landscaping and buffering, which was also sort of left to the staff's discretion as to what was an appropriate amount, which could include berming and different types of plant materials, etc. As far as the building itself, main entrances must be defined with projections and recessed areas along the facade. First floor facade should incorporate 15% glass encouraged and entryways, offices, and in corners. There was some discussion about whether it must be included or a requirement. Finally kind of came up where it's strongly encouraged, and the word should. So it does give the architectural team some clear direction that we expect some glass in these areas. We'd like to have 15%, but it's 13% or 8%. But we need all these other requirements to sort of track the building. And staff would approve something like that or recommend approval to the planning commission. And then also, finally, buildings should have special vertical articulation of building corners and or the main entry. And really, we spent a fairly good part of our meeting discussing these. Actually, the last three items, four really. And that's basically what we're recommending to City Council for adoption. I would note that Patrick did, after we went through and it took us a while to get the appropriate motion with all the sort of changes that were coming on the fly, so to speak. Patrick did clean up a few things and make some changes to help codify the language of what the Planning Commission was intending, and because of that, it will take 2/3 majority by the council to approve. So with that, I'll just answer any questions you all may have.
Okay. Questions for Brad?
How confident are you that where we're at now on this isn't gonna require a lot more changes or other changes as other developments come about and come and do the same thing, kind of what Flint did and said, hey, we want these things in here to make it easier for us to, and I'm not saying that they were justifiable, you know, that very well could be the case. Understanding that, you know, we don't change them every year and, you know, when things start to come about and times change, it changes, but, you know, I also hate to see, every time somebody wants something different that we're changing our codes.
Yeah. Well, I guess, first of all, the main reason this all came up was we don't allow tilted construction, so we're gonna have to get into this anyway. And because of that, then of course you start looking at all the other facets that could be improved and tweaked. So I guess to answer your question, I don't see, at least from staff's perspective, that we would, somebody say we want to change this to a 200-foot setback or getting into some of these smaller items that might, it takes 2-3 meetings, planning commission and council time. If we're only going to change a few numbers here and there, it's like, I think we could work with a lot of things, and that's why you get to this more subjective standard, so you don't have to, you know, somebody's only got 8% masonry versus 10%, you have to go back and tweak the code. So that's why communities have gone to this process. Anyway, to answer your question, I think we're in a pretty good shape to have enough information in our code that we can push back if somebody basically comes up with a grain elevator type looking building. Tell them, no, we're not even going to bring that to the planning commission, but also we're going to be able to give some flexibility to developing agencies, and they can proceed with this, even though it might not have 50% glass or some things like that. I don't know, that's a long-winded answer, but I feel confident that
Okay.
we're in a good position.
And at the meeting with the public that attended and asked questions and made comments, did you feel that they seemed to be okay with what was come up with? Do you feel like that we're gonna still get a lot of opposition from, or comments from them moving forward, or
I
were
think
their
they'll-
issues answered?
I think they'll always be in tune with what we're doing. My perspective is sort of reality is set in with them, that they know this is gonna happen, so it's time to stop trying to dig in and fight and stop these things, but more or less to try to work within the system a little bit, trust that staff and planning commission will try as best possible. Like I said, we're not gonna make these buildings disappear. They will be there, they will affect their views and what they see and what additional traffic on Edgerton Road, but I've had conversations with them over the phone. I know some of the planning commissioners have as well. And I think their concerns are alleviated somewhat. They're not quite there yet, but at first, when this first came out, I think they felt like we were just trying to ram something down that road. But once they got into the fact that they've come to the meeting several times, they've talked to us many times on the phone. I think they're starting to accept what's going to happen. They may not like it. Now they're starting to work more within the confines of how we have to do business.
Because it seemed like most of their questions or comments were on maybe the setback and the lighting. And I just, but it looks like we kind of did a pretty good job with, 250 on the setback seems to be probably in their favor, kind of what they were looking at. So I don't think we not heard what they said, and maybe that had something to do with why even the planning commission went with 250 rather than 200, and wants to look at the lighting again. Is that kind of
The loading dock issue related to the setback was another one. We've got quite a bit of discussion, understandably so.
Yes,
Right,
the
right.
250 is just on a loading dock on a residential facing street.
Yeah, right.
So, my question is that gonna affect the developers, design conception of what they originally thought they could do out there? Then they're gonna take away some space from them?
Yeah, good question for the developer, who's has representation here in the audience, if you want to hear from them. What we tried to do was craft an amendment, like Roy said, that will apply to all of this. And give it a degree of diligence so that we at least cover the main basis. Not to say that there will be something that comes up on a future project, but we think we've done a good job at trying to look at all these different scenarios, and like Brad said, touring around the other parts of the county to see what other jurisdictions have done, I think was the main thing.
Brad, were their setbacks about the same?
Well, the 200-foot came from all the way, that's where their standard was. And Commissioner Milford did some research and actually, from what I understand, I think he went out and viewed a few places and measured 250 feet in a couple of instances. And some locations in Lenexa that where he found were actually up against residential areas. So that's where he came up with the 250 foot. We'd actually talked about 300 foot setback, but that almost seemed to be too restrictive. I mean, think about something like football field, which you're just having for space, just for setbacks, and that seemed a little bit too restrictive. This also only applies to residential facing areas. So one thing good about the Sunflower site is there's nobody living out there, so we don't have, and there will be some areas probably further south, some farm residences along the areas that this might come into play, but there's some concessions that you have to make aware of. It's not always about maximizing every inch of property. You might be able to accommodate the development community as much as we can. It's just not always possible, so we come up with a reasonable standard. I think one thing also I'd like to add is, this is sort of the first test case for how to establish the planning commission as well. So I think that's why when you mentioned, are we gonna come back with little changes here and there? I don't think so, because this is, we're sort of growing up on this one. We're establishing our baseline for this, expect hearing from residents is, and what they expect as well.
Any questions? More questions?
I think I'll, maybe kind of going back to Lori's original question, and Mike, you said, I think what I like is that you also looked at, you didn't reinvent a wheel. I think, I heard you say that our existing code was in pretty good shape when you compared it to others, and I believe that to be the case. But, I also believe in, looking at what's worked in other areas and hasn't, and then tailor that to our own unique situation. So I appreciate hearing that you looked at other codes that are out there for, because they're farther along than we are, and we haven't had to tweak ours very much. So I like the comparison.
Yeah, one thing also I might add is, our next Shawnee, they do a lot of planned unit. So everything that they talk about, especially with new development, they end up all sorts of issues that we just don't have staff to deal with as well. So that's another reason why we just really best to modify what we have. And like I said, a lot of the language that we have in our code is very similar to theirs. It's simply a little bit different level of scrutiny. We have more staff time to think forward to these things.
I guess my last question, Mary, does the developer feel that the height restriction on the lighting is going to provide a safe environment for them?
I think the user code, if you'd like to answer that, would be great, but we didn't get any feedback or discussion from them on the height of the lighting. And they're pretty versed in our city code as well, so.
I mean, I don't think we necessarily changed the illumination. I mean, we're still requiring, the foot candles are still required. So it's what it's going to take, I'm assuming if you can't get the illumination with a high mast, is more shorter lights that will create that same. So the light level, safety level should be the same.
Okay.
Okay. The question I had for you, Brad, was on the architectural, the minimum exterior building material standards, and it was 3. It says the following materials shall be prohibited on all exterior wall. And the first item was, my question pertains to, it says concrete finish or precast concrete panel tilt wall that is not exposed aggregate, hammered, sandblasted, or covered with a cement-based or other coating. Is that consistent with all of, with the industry standard? Is that what, I mean?
Yeah, and once again, I'm not an expert in all these things, but concrete wall panels are made now, from what I understand, they're made on site. The acrylic sealant is something that allows them to be painted in different colors.
Right.
And allows some of the variations in the paint sort of patterns into all those type of things. So that's sort of what the industry is going to, so they can create a lot of architectural dynamic, just the paint itself, and not get into what sandblasting and some of the other things there. I think of probably older techniques as far as creating those variations within concrete.
Okay.
And I gathered that since the only change in there is the addition of or others, it's not limited to cement.
Right, that was what I just
Okay. Yeah.
make sure that we understood that it's like all that acrylic material is probably no longer cement exclusively. And that what's going in my mind is basically they're being painted essentially, to create those accent panels or stripes or whatever it might be. But
So this still fits what you're saying?
yeah,
In your opinion?
You feel it?
I just wanted to make sure
adequate
that
to-
we're of the same understanding, yeah.
That's
And I-
correct,
yeah.
yes.
Not to belabor it, but now, reading this, I just want to make sure there's not a language. So what it's saying here is that you cannot have a concrete finish or precast concrete panel that is not exposed aggregate. Hammer, it just seems like the sentence maybe kind of is a
Well,
little twisted
It's
there.
because it
What- I
says
mean,
that
what-
following are prohibited, so everything is prohibited on exterior walls. So concrete is prohibited on concrete walls that if it's not been exposed to some kind of a finish. So it
So we
has to have a
can't-
finish to make it,
We can't just
you
turn
can't
up a
just
raw
put
concrete
concrete
edge
up
that we have
and,
to treat it.
right, not having some kind of finish. So it is, but it's a double
I
negative there.
see what it's
There's
saying
a
now.
double negative, and that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. That's the thing that got me started. First of all, I read it and it's like, well, we're going to allow precast
You have to read that,
concrete.
you
and
have to read
one
that
tilted
twice
up.
you can't
Yeah,
skip,
okay.
you can't skip number 3. You have to read it all the way through to get what number
Exactly.
A, B, and C are.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
It'd be helpful if the pagination worked out correctly.
Yeah, right. Does anyone else have any other questions for Brad?
No, I appreciate the time for Brad and everyone who worked on this and was able to work with the representatives from the developer to be able to come up, getting ours up to date and feeling that we're comfortable with them, so.
Are we ready to make a motion?
I was gonna say, I can find that here. I lost the motion. It's on a different page.
Are we looking for 10, ordinance 25?
Oh, here it is. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2531, to revise the city zoning regulations as written.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdock,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanneman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mayor gets the
Oh,
vote.
sorry, Mayor Walker, thank you.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. I don't get a vote on many things, Brandon, so
I apologize for taking that away from you.
All right. Item C, consider ordinance 2532, adopting text amendment recommended by Planning Commission for restaurant sales in M1, C2, and C1 zoning district.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. I guess you were briefed on this at the last meeting, and so we brought that back to the Planning Commission because I didn't notice that we were going to talk about the C1 and C2 districts. So I'm not going to cover all the ground, and I have to go back through and also bring up the Planning Commission on those items that we talked about in the C1 and C2 districts as far as restaurant recommendations. The Planning Commission did appreciate the additional clarification that you got from Joe Bazone on the ghost kitchens concept and how that's sort of the direction he was going. It seemed there's a little bit of fuzziness as far as how that was going to work in an M1 zoning district. But after we went through those changes with the Planning Commission, explained to them why this was back before them, because the notification only talked about the M1 district. We did focus on the ghost kitchens concept and how that might work. I think the Planning Commission was pretty receptive to this idea. I actually thought it was a good thing that apparently could work out to benefit to the employees and people that might be potentially working out at Sunflower location once it becomes more and more developed. Felt like this could also benefit DeSoto in a lot of different areas as well. So really, at the end of the day, all we're typically adding is, or changing is the zoning districts table on what's allowed by special use permit and what is allowed by right. So on the red lines, you can see on page 4 of 4, we are removing a couple of codes that are no longer in the NAICS registry of businesses or types of businesses and replacing them with the new divisions of restaurants and other eating places, limited service restaurants, and then we added our own category, delivery or carry-out kitchen services only. That sort of take care of Joe Pizzona, what he's trying to do. And those were allowed by right in the M1 and C2 districts. Limited service restaurants were allowed by right in C1 and C2 as are restaurants and other eating places. Special use permit, if you're going to have a typical restaurant, be required for M1 district. Or they could just rezone, which is pretty much the exact same process. So they do have that option. A property zone M1, they want to open up a drive-through restaurant or a fast food type restaurant. They have the option to go through the special use permit process or just rezone the property itself. And then finally, we did get rid of the sales of alcohol or malt beverage, didn't make that distinction. However, it would be permitted by right in the C1, C2 district. And also, there's no change to that in the office industrial M1 district. That would require a special use permit. And then finally, on the 7222, the drive-through food service, planning commission thought it was appropriate just to allow that in commercial C2 district. So any restaurant that has drive-through, Taco Bell, Burger King, McDonald's, et cetera, needs to be in a C2 district. And I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
I appreciate the planning commission visiting this again after they've just done it. I appreciate it. But I think we've accomplished what we were hoping to accomplish here, and we're able to clean up some of the language as well.
It took us a little while, but we did
Yeah.
get through it.
Any questions from council?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2532 as presented tonight, adopting the planning commission's recommendation to revise the DeSoto zoning regulations pertaining to certain restaurant uses.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Daniels.
Yes.
Monomichael.
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Mayor Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Item C. No, item D.
Item D, and Mayor, it appears that our company the company I have an interest in, is listed as a sub-consultant
Okay.
on this item, so I will have to recuse myself.
Okay.
So noted.
Noted that Councilman Hahn-Michael is left. Thank you. Consider recommendation for engineering design consultant for the 83rd Street Bridge Replacement Project.
There is $250,000 in this year's CIP for the design of the 83rd Street Bridge Replacement Project. The city sent out an RFQ, and we received 4 responses. A review committee of myself, Mike, Ron Creason, and Councilmember Daniels reviewed the proposals. After our initial review, we held 2 informal interviews and selected Lochner Inc. to be the firm. They were selected because of their understanding of the scope of the project, their experience with the railroading, permitting, and having completed this recent citywide bridge project inspection in the city of DeSoto. The RFP and response from Lochner are in the agenda item, and I have reached out to Lochner and asked him to put together a proposal for scope and fee documents, and we'll bring back a proposed contract to the council for their consideration.
Okay. Questions for Brandon on the consultant selection? You want a question?
Just a little addition.
Okay.
Lochner, you might remember, designed the bridge on 95th over Cedar Creek
Yeah.
for us several years ago. And also, they had quite a bit of experience with KDOT's local projects delivery process. you might remember, we got $1 million for this bridge from KDOT, and it will be administered through kind of a KDOT approval letting process. So, and Lochner had a lot of experience with them too, so real comfortable moving forward with them. I don't know that any action is required tonight. The action will be for the contract when we bring that scope and feedback for your consideration, but schedule is, to get this thing designed this year and essentially bid it probably next spring, and construction in the summer of 2023.
The fund, that's when the KDOT funds are.
Yeah, actually KDOT's deadline for the funding availability is to be bid by September of 23. So yeah, we're in good shape.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Someone want to go get Councilman Hanamichael, please? All right, item 5 is executive session, which we have none, correct? All right, advisory report, city administrator.
Not a lot, council. Happy to answer any questions. I did, a couple things. I sent out an email on the base grant applications yesterday, I think. Wound up submitting 2 of those applications. One was for road improvements in the southwest growth area, and the other one was for sewer. I've requested a total of about $26 million, which I don't think aren't holding our breath on a lot of that. The road project was the big one, about $24 million total in roads, and 75% of that's what we requested on that one. The sewer was a little less, requesting about $6 million on that. That committee received 444 applications for $100 million total available. And I've heard that those applications total more than $1 billion. I've heard anywhere from 1.2 to 1.8 billion dollars. And KDOT is only, or not KDOT, the Department of Commerce has only allowed themselves 30 days to announce awards. So that's a lot of work to do in 30 days. So we'll wait to see the results of that. I did send that email. It's a lot, so if you want to have any questions about that, let me know. The only other thing on my list to tell you was the progress on the on-call engineering consultant selection process. So in our budget this year, we have some money for a consulting work for city engineering type services, and we submitted a request for qualifications and got 12 responses back from local civil engineering firms primarily. Kevin Hanamichael and Lori have agreed to look over those and help us evaluate those. And you mentioned that you wanted to see them. I don't know.
No, I'm going to participate, and I think
committed? Okay.
Yeah, Councilman Hanamichael has to step back from that, I believe. Is that correct?
No, that was the bridge. That was the bridge.
I thought you were listed. Your firm was listed as a.
No, we were listed on this agenda
Okay.
item D.
Gotcha. I thought I'd read you sent an email that somebody put you in for a survey consultant on.
Oh, I have not.
One of
made it through
those,
all of those yet. So, yeah, if that's the case.
I think we'll verify that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing it, I kind of got lazy.
Honestly, I haven't been through them all yet either.
The consultant part of it at the end, so I kind of got a little bit, so I'll have to.
Yeah, I'll make a run back through and I'll ask our guys.
Yeah.
Things like
Okay.
pictures and children, the later ones get less.
We have a target date for one of the meetings in April to bring a recommendation. So we have a month to figure that out. I mean, the sooner the better.
By the end of the week.
That was my plan, was to have
was
it.
the
The 8th, March 17th, that was my goal.
Oh,
was to put it on the council.
I don't think we're going to make this up.
That's pretty.
He wanted
That's
the
optimistic.
Yeah.
scoring by the end of the week.
Yeah, that way we could kind of
Like
go back.
tomorrow.
And I was working on a new the ranking sheet was kind of geared more toward a traditional rather than this kind of on-call.
Well, right, so.
I was making a new ranking sheet,
I had the same issue.
putting new criteria together for that.
The only reason I would push to push it up and keep it in March is just because, and I'll talk about this in my report, but the city's applying for a grant for trails with Kansas Department of Transportation, and that deadline is mid-May. And so that's really, and we need to get an engineering estimate before that. That is the only
Well, if we
thing.
need to pull the trigger
Yeah.
on something on a one-off on that, maybe we
Okay.
could do it.
Yeah.
Okay, we could do that then, that's fine. Yeah, so I'm comfortable pushing into April.
Okay, well, sorry, I didn't mean to step on your.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That was really our.
Charge, but you're not really in
Yeah,
charge.
Yeah, that was our big push
To the
was
point that
to.
I'm clueless about
Yeah.
what.
He's hiring good people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's hiring good people and
Things without even
empowering
knowing
them.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So-
good.
Well, the discussion about scoring, so I will get an email out tomorrow to kind of give a little better focus on the concepts.
Yeah, I was
behind
just
how we
going through the
evaluate.
RFQ and then pulling the high points that we said, the things that we said were important in the RFQ and making those
Yeah.
scoring
perfect.
topics in the sheet. And I had it done and then,
And I struggled with
Didn't
the
say.
applicability as well.
yeah, so.
Yeah, we didn't give, we were kind of nebulous on the direction there.
Yeah.
But I'll send out some clarifications tomorrow. We'll look through the proposals.
Yeah, I will make a.
Make sure, and maybe I am confusing myself as well.
With the bridge job.
It could be.
Okay.
But I swear, I went through all 18 or 14 of those, however many there were, and I thought I saw a BHC.
Yeah,
in
so then
one of those.
I'll clearly step down.
But
Okay.
I was also looking at the bridge one, so.
Okay.
You know.
They may run together.
They do, yeah.
All right,
Okay, yeah, that was all from me, so
okay.
answer any questions.
Well, I thought that was Brandon's present part.
Well, I probably stepped all over that too.
Mike's just stepping all over his toes.
Is what it is, I guess.
Sorry.
All right, so you're done?
Yes.
All right. City attorney,
Nothing for me.
city clerk.
I have two things. Let me pull up my notes real fast. Or three things, actually. The first, dog tags are due at the end of the month. I don't know if you guys saw the post we had on Facebook that got quite a bit of likes. That's actually Whitney's dog that was in City Hall. The chamber dinner is March 25th. I've heard from almost everyone on council, yay or nay. And then the other thing we kind of talked about already was the transportation alternative grants with the Kansas Department of Transportation. We submitted kind of the initial step, or they're calling it their concept form, which is just kind of, this is the high level proposal that we're coming up with some preliminary cost estimates. And so Jay and I are working on that right now, the kind of final one that would go, that's due to the state by May 13th. We submitted that preliminary estimate on Monday. So we should know from the state of Kansas sometime in the summer if we get the grant. And we applied for that full $2 million with the 20% match that we talked about in December.
Trails.
Trails, yes.
Okay. Thank you. City planner, do you have a?
I guess I'd just add, Mayor, I do appreciate the council's comments and yours on work the planning commission has put in. I think these two items really sort of stretched everybody and made them really dig in and do some homework and research and really understand their role a lot better and how what they do does impact the residences, the citizens, not just in DeSoto, but obviously outside of DeSoto as we kind of come up against these issues about city, county, designations and how all of this works. So I think they're appreciative of the joint meeting, and also I think they're really getting their feet about themselves on growing up on what's going to be in front of them over the next several years.
Okay, thank you. Council comments. Kevin, you want to start tonight?
Yeah, I'll start by passing.
All right. Lori.
I think I'm good tonight. Thank you.
All right. Rob?
Nothing tonight. Actually, I do have one thing tonight. And this might be something to just had Mike come back and explain as much to our constituents where we can come back and say, take a look at this council meeting. But with the valuations of everybody's property that's come out,
Yeah.
and, I mean, my property in 3 years has gone up $100,000 in valuation. I'm getting a lot of questions about the mill levy. And that if their property values went up by 2 times, then the city's bringing in twice as much.
Yeah.
So with kind of the property tax lid that was in place, how it was modified, how that affects it, just kind of maybe bring a report of how that all kind of comes together and affects how much income the city receives in a future
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, great suggestion, because we're so involved in it and immersed in it. We kind of, in this room, understand how that all plays and interacts, and people pay their taxes in dollars, not mill levies, so we get that, but oftentimes the public has questions about it. So, yeah, I'm glad
And
to
maybe
do
even
that.
at that point, bring an example of what somebody's example would be of a
Yeah.
home worth this would be, to where it's
That's
in the dollar and cents of somebody looking at it from their perspective.
Yeah, it'd be a very good kickoff to our budget, you know, because now, this time of year now, we're kicking off the budget, and, incidentally, the mayor and I met with county appraiser. He came here and spent an hour with us going through the valuations and exactly what DeSoto's valuation assessed and appraised valuations were. We increased 16.8% overall,
Yep.
over last year. 16.8, it's just,
But does that include new construction
It
as
does
well?
include new
it does include, but there's not a great big,
Right.
most of the
Most of
vast
that
majority of
was-
that
Was
is-
appreciation?
Well, and even then,
Yeah.
like my house was compared to 2 properties in your subdivision.
Really?
Uh-huh. That
Yeah.
sold for twice as much as my house was, but, and it's like,
Well, and
So-
from an appraiser standpoint, I think, well, what was most interesting about that meeting was that, they have, I think it's a statutory obligation, that their values they place on the properties have to be within a range of
Right.
the actual market value that's established.
93 to 104% of market value, I think, as I recall. I mean, and that's,
consistently
yeah.
been, 94 to 93, kind of under that, but consistently. So.
that's where I think most of us have a decent handle, although the property tax lid and how it's modified. But like I said, as much as anything, creating a time and space to explain it to where even if somebody's not here, we can direct them to watch the council meeting and
Yeah, it'd be a good
Try and get some
opportunity for a
understanding.
Facebook post and,
Or
it's
even
not-
a small article in the Discovery.
Yeah.
DeSoto, even though it won't be out.
or all of the above.
Yeah, right,
Considering
right. It won't,
It's
so the
probably
Discovering
most
DeSoto.
inquired about topic.
Yeah. Speaking of Discovering DeSoto, the latest episode was all about the TIF. Whitney did a great job putting that together.
It was really good.
Very informative. Hopefully, if there's questions, that's a resource we could point to get some detail,
Yeah.
some education out on it. Similar stuff will be going on with the sales tax referendum, yeah. So, yeah, we can get that on the list to do, Rob. Good suggestion.
Thank you, Rob. Kevin?
Brandon, if you're holding my seats for the dinner, give them to somebody else, I'll sit at another table.
Yeah, I have. I think we talked about it before. I got you taken care of.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Danny, anything for the group tonight?
Yeah, I just want to say, like I've heard here, thanks to the planning commission, Mike, and yourself there, that you did a good job. And everybody appreciates you guys going the extra mile, and Mayor, your work and talking on that, on putting all that together. I think the planning commission and them need some kudos, and they just did a fantastic job with Mike and Brad and the mayor and everybody that helped out. So thank you all.
All right.
And that's all. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Danny. On my list, so the first thing I did have was what you brought up, and the 16%, 8%, I was gonna tell you that we met with the county appraiser and went through all that, so we will have those discussions coming up, but with that 18% or 17 growth in our valuation, that revenue neutral discussion, I mean, that bill, I haven't run the numbers, but it'll be interesting to see what.
It'll definitely require a rollback,
Yeah,
for sure.
it'll be, right, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just
if
how-
the revenue
how
neutral
far
rate will
back.
be below our current
Right.
mills. Yeah, with that.
It was, gosh, I want to say, I'm going to throw the wrong number, so I'm not going to say, but the new value was not nearly as much as I thought. It's like maybe 0.86%.
Yeah, I was thinking it was about 1%.
Less,
Yeah.
right around 1% of that was new value. New construction or, yeah. Remodels, improvements through remodels or new construction. So,
I think that might change in the future.
yeah. And kind of along those lines, I've been rolling out in my head maybe some better graphic to show, that some way that, more than with words, with some sort of picture or graphic that kind of helps to relay the message about the taxes we collect, how that is related to your value, your property value. I don't have that thing rolled through my head yet. It hasn't come out the other end, but it's rolling around in there.
Well, you're good at that. Oh, you might need your help.
Because a lot of people aren't familiar with revenue neutral or
Right.
the prior to that, and so.
The one other thing I wanted to mention was we have Tom Jacobs and Mayor Mike Kelly from Roland Park on the tentatively scheduled to come present to the Planning Commission and the council at a work session at April, what was that?
I think it was the second meeting.
It's our second meeting in April, and
The 21st.
that's, okay.
Is that right?
So Mike will be getting some information out, and Brad will to the Planning Commission as well, but I had asked him to try and get a date in March, and that got a little convoluted, because one of them replied, well, May 3rd works well. Instead, he meant March 3rd, and of course, this was a month ago, and I thought, oh, well, May, he must be busy, so we didn't pursue it anymore, and so we got an email yesterday, and is asking if they're still on for today. It's like, no, we didn't get that rolled up. But I think that will be timely, because Mark is having like a climate action summit at JUCO coming up, probably, I think, the week before they'll be coming to present to us. It's early April, but.
I'll get a calendar invite out.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way,
Yeah.
so you'll have it on your calendars.
All
There's
right.
a workshop that night.
One maintenance item that is not ours, I sent you the email, there's a sign as you approach K10 headed south on Kill Creek Road that's been laying down all winter.
In front of the farmhouse by the barn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think when it says like Lenexa and Lawrence,
Oh, yeah.
Like, I sent you the email and a picture, can you forward that on to KDOT and say,
Yeah,
guys, can
no
you
problem.
please
Sure.
Is that
reset your
Is that
sign?
KDOT sign, or?
Yeah, it'd be KDOT's sign. It's a big green one, it's a highway sign, so that's theirs. And then I have one last item, and I'm gonna ask that we come up with some money so we can get a better microphone for Brad at that podium, so that he doesn't have.
Oh, yeah.
Can we get?
Yeah, we're on it. We're on it, yeah.
And thanks also to Patrick for your work on the planning commission on all that stuff. I'm sorry I left you out when I said Brad and Mike.
That's all I got.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Great.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
That April work session, I can start at 6.